Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome New York Times staff writer Charles Bagli and guest Stephen Ross.
Right.
Steve, I know you're not the developer who's running for president, but you have built more.
Not a bad idea.
You have built more housing, more even office space than that guy, whatever his name is. And so I want to ask you about what I think is probably your biggest project, and one that involves both the city and the state and a private developer, and that is Hudson Yards, a $15 billion city within a city. Why is that going to be the complex of the future?
Well, if you look and you see what's going on in New York and what is done in the past, you see the commitment that the city and state has made to that area. Over $4 billion has been committed and actually spent, I think, to date, to really update that area and really create what I believe will become the new heart of New York. They've built the extension for the subway, the 7 subway line, at a cost of about $2 billion. About several hundred millions of dollars has gone into the High Line. You have the Hudson River Park for another probably $500 million. $500 million has been spent on the Hudson Boulevard that is creating this new park-like street between 10th and 11th Avenues all the way to 41st Street. That's almost completed today. So when you have this type of commitment to that part of the city and you see that type of spending, you know something big is happening. And I think, when we looked at it, we thought it was almost like the perfect storm, and you'd see the popularity of the High Line, and you see where the growth of the city is occurring, where young people want to be. And New York is a city where if you really want to follow the growth or where the trends are, just follow where the young people are going. And that today is the hottest part of New York, Chelsea. And also you can see where the young people have gone to Brooklyn and what it's done for Brooklyn. So
now, right now, you've got, 2 office buildings, a mall, a couple of residential towers, and a cultural center that are underway, correct?
A little more than that. We have over 10 million square feet under construction today. I think, it's part of the city people don't really understand what's really coming upon them because you go by there, you only see one building that is really up in the air, which is the Coach building that'll be completed by the end of next year. But there's an additional 8 million square feet that are under construction that'll be open in the fall of 18.
Let me ask you something. The mall, 1 million square feet, and the city, if I'm not mistaken, broke policy, and they gave a big tax break to the mall. They hadn't done that before, given money to retail. You would think shopping in New York, why would you have to stimulate that with public money?
No.
It makes people think maybe a public-private partnership is more a private-private partnership.
Well, the extension of the subway line was funded by the tax dollars that would be generated by the project. And in order to stimulate and make sure that the project would go forward, there was a tax incentive to get the project underway, because if you looked at that area, people would question, why should there ever be development there? They're over the yards, and you have the complexity of building over the rail yards and the additional cost. So there was a tax break, and for the first several million square feet. And so, and it was only for commercial, not for residential. We have to build affordable housing, that's part of the project. But in order to encourage and incentivize commercial development, they provided a tax break. So for the amount of square footage, part of that we're using for the retail component of the project as well as for the offices. And that was an as-of-right type of incentive, and that was all part of the original legislation before we were selected for the project.
Let's move a few blocks to the east. And actually, I should have some images up here. Well, this was Hudson, the West Side Yards, where you're building on top of 26 acres of an active rail yard.
Well, I mean, right now we've bought additional land. There's over 30 acres today. We've increased the size of it, which was originally 13 million square feet. We're up to 19 million square feet of the project. And we're putting in the center of the project a large plaza that is larger than really Bryant Park or Trafalgar Square. And in that park, we are putting in a sculpture. And I mean, this is why I really believe the shifting of the center of the city will really gravitate to, Hudson Yards, because what we're putting in there will be what the Eiffel Tower is to Paris. This will be to New York. It is a monumental sculpture that I think will really be so iconic, it'll really capture the imagination of all New Yorkers and anybody wanting to come and visit New York.
All right, a couple blocks away, we have the Moynihan Project. We're turning this elegant post office building into an adjunct for Penn Station, everyone's nightmare of a train station. Now, you were selected 10 years ago last month.
Correct.
June of 2005.
Correct.
And nothing has happened.
Do we have enough time to talk about that?
Well, this is a public-private partnership that doesn't seem to have generated very much. What happened, or why hasn't anything
Okay, well, originally we're selected, our proposal was really to move Madison Square Garden so you could create a new Penn Station, which everybody really wanted. We were selected in the waning days of the Pataki administration. To tell you how long ago that was, seems like it was forever.
Yeah.
But and with that in mind, so it was our idea to move Madison Square Gardens to the back portion of the Moynihan Station. We did get the consent of Dolan. We had a letter of intent with Madison Square Garden, and then Spitzer came on, and his negotiating tactics changed the whole dynamic, and Dolan walked away. Surprise. So then we went through a period of time, what do you do with the back of the station? And we came up with the idea of taking the Borough Manhattan Community College, which was down on West Street, that was kind of an obsolete structure, where you could see trailers in the street on West Street, if you remember, and with the idea that we would move that to the back of Farley, give them an additional 500,000 square feet in exchange for the college land on West Street, which is already zoned for residential at a 10 times FAR, and it would cost the city and state no money at all. We would be totally transparent in our cost and appraisals on the land, so they would get a new Borough Manhattan Community College, plus an additional 500,000 feet from the existing college, which they needed, and we would develop the portion of where Borough Manhattan College is today into 2.5 million square feet of residential, including affordable housing, and put it back on the tax rolls. Now that seemed like a great plan of using resources that, when the city had no money to either build a new college or, what they would do with the back of Moynihan. We thought it was one of our great ideas, and that was shot down.
Let me interrupt for a moment. It would have been nice to have the garden there or BMCC, but the fact of the matter is I was there at the press conference when you were selected, and the idea was you're to build an adjunct train station, put in some retail on the ground, and 10 years later, there's nothing.
But the train station is being built today. The money has come forth, and they are building the train station. That is occurring today. Where we at? the reason the proposal for the BMCC was turned down, it was blamed on Shelley Silver. Wouldn't take it through, and you needed the PAC approval to get it approved by Albany. So that was shot down. So what we are doing now, and what the status is, we are waiting for the city and state to finalize an agreement that we will purchase the Moynihan Station, give them cash, and create some type of bring high-tech industry or using it for office space or tech space.
So how soon might we see something?
We've been waiting right now for the last year and a half for the city and state to conclude their arrangements so that we can close on that deal and move forward.
Okay, I don't think we have an image. There was the transformation of the post office building, which yet to take place. Okay, and this is California.
No, that's Florida.
Florida. Aren't they the same?
Okay, that's what the New York Times believes. Okay.
Well, it's on the other side of the Hudson somewhere. All right. So.
No, that was that is a project that we're be doing in Santa Clara, California, across from the 49ers' new ballpark. There was a 250-acre landfill project that for the last 25 years has been filled and been used as a golf course. And we were selected to develop that, and right in the heart of Silicon Valley, and really creating kind of an urban experience in Silicon Valley, which is probably the hottest real estate market in the United States today, because as we all know what's going on with tech. And right now we're hope to get our environmental approvals by the end of this year, and that's so we could start construction in the fall of 16.
Okay, well, let's skip this one.
Where do you get these?
All right, let's go out, Columbus Circle. Okay. At one time, you thought this might be, I remember talking with you, that this could be the Rockefeller Center of the 21st century. Now I think perhaps you think the Hudson Yards will have that mantle, no?
Well, I mean, you know, the dream of any developer, you build, I mean, to me, it was, you know, first creating a living and then, you know, building buildings, and we built enough buildings, and, you know, working with the city and state. And I mean, we work under the mantra that if the city does well, we do well, and looking forward and ahead to what's really needed. When we were selected for the Columbus Circle project, you know, we saw the opportunities that were existent there and developed really, I think, a truly great mixed-use project that's probably one of the granddaddies of all mixed-use projects, because there's 5 uses in that one building. And it totally transformed the area. It was very successful. And, you know, then my question was, what do you do after that? You know, and when Hudson Yards came along, the challenges of doing something there that could be very transformative, you know, really excited us, and we really, you know, got up for the challenge and think that we're really creating something there that will really be very beneficial and create something that's really needed within the city.
All right, let's jump out to Queens. It's not quite Florida or California, but almost. Willets Point was a kind of messy, semi-industrial area next to the Mets ballpark. And there were 1,700 people working there, but they were underwater whenever it rained. And the Bloomberg administration invited developers to bid to transform this area. The whole idea, in the beginning at least, was to build a lot of housing in an area that needed it desperately. But ultimately, it became, or the largest feature was a 1 million square foot mall. We seem to be getting a lot of those. And the courts just ruled last week that this was a bad project, seeming to agree with critics that thought this is maybe one of the worst projects of the Bloomberg era. What do you think? What is the status of this, and what
I
do you
definitely don't agree with it since we were selected to develop it. So
Somehow
to
I
start
knew you
with,
were going
I
to
can
say
tell you
it.
that.
I don't know what it was, but so what's going on there?
Well, I mean, if there's any part of the city that you feel you're in a third world country, go out there and see what's going on at Willets Point. I mean, it's been that way. There's no city sewer. There's nothing, and you see all these junk shops and what goes on there. So it's certainly an area that absolutely needs to be redeveloped. And I think the Bloomberg administration saw that. There's also a great need for affordable housing out there. And part of our plan is just not to build a mall, but also to build a large amount of affordable housing and other services that are needed in parks for the community. And also it was proposed that the soccer team in New York was looking for a home, and that would be a great home for the soccer team, for a stadium, a small 25,000 seat stadium there. I think the de Blasio administration is certainly in favor of the affordable housing. They want to see the soccer stadium there, and we were approved for 1 million square feet of retail there. And there's certainly enough land there to do it. It's a good use. You have, the confluence of all the highways coming together right there, and I think it's a project that would be very beneficial to Queens and really cleaning up that part of the city and providing affordable housing.
Of course, the land we're talking about is parkland, public parkland.
No,
and,
I mean,
and that's why the court ruled against the project last week.
But not all
But
the
I wonder
land.
if
Not
there-
all the land is parkland. The
Okay.
Bloomberg
I'll give you that.
administration.
I'll give you that, but let me get on to the next question.
Okay.
Wasn't there a particularly sticky kind of issue? I know that Willets Point, the Iron Triangle, whatever you call it, that it was a bunch of ramshackle auto body shops,
Yes.
auto repair. But I know when I was out there, it was very interesting. You had something like 1,700 people working there. Generally, you might say these are hard to employ people, but they were earning a living out there. And I know from watching, people would drive up and from all over the tri-state area because they knew they could get a deal there. There were so many different
Or their
shops.
drugs.
Well, it's a free market. So, wasn't that something to take into consideration is the whole issue of these
Well, if there's a need
jobs?
for it, they always find a way of places to relocate, in areas that they can continue doing their jobs because there's a demand for this auto work being done. It's like when they moved the Hunts Point Market. They found a new place for them to go, and I'm sure that would happen as well here for those legitimate enterprises. So, but I think if you look at that part and you look at also the safety that's involved there and what it is in the middle of New York City and what could go there, I'm sure there's a much higher and better use, that can go on that land and that should go on that land. And so that's all part of the development. And everybody, and it was upheld in the courts, the eminent domain of the taking of the land by the city, for the affordable housing, and for the parks that was proposed there. So I think it's something that anybody going there would certainly be in favor of seeing what we're proposing.
Well, they have the Mets for a distraction. But so what happens next out there? Oh,
with a question, if you guys don't mind.
all right, fire away.
I think we have time for one quick question, and this is coming from Ronald Schiffman. What are you doing at Hudson Yards to make sure that opportunities exist for low and moderate income housing so this section of the city is not exclusionary and meets the fair housing goals articulated by the Secretary of HUD? And how does that play into your larger vision of projects in New York?
Well, part of the original proposal, and still is, and it's mandated, is that there be a certain amount of affordable housing in that project. So all the goals are being met, will be met. We already have built part of the affordable housing for the project, and the buildings will meet all the goals of the affordable housing that's required. Roughly about 20% of the rental housing.
I think that's all we have.
Okay. Do you have another question?
That's the one we had.
That's the one.
No other questions?
One over here.
Can you tell us more about the iconic sculpture?
Wait a minute. That's going to be my story in a short time.
I promised Charlie that we would let the times we have that. It's something that we're really keeping under wraps. At this point, you know, we have the project under construction. We're doing very well in our leasing of our office space. We're probably gotten already 6 million square feet leased, and a number of other tenants that we're about to sign up, and that we have Neiman Marcus coming there. And so at this point, I don't really want to burn the traffic and the excitement, because it will be some time till the public can really, you know, see something, or we have to offer the public, which will be the sale of the residential units, which will occur next summer. Next July, we'll open up our sales office. So we're really keeping it under wraps until that point in time. But it is being manufactured. Now everybody can go scrambling where. I'm not going to say that, tell you where that is. But it is quite substantial, and I think it's going to be very, very unique and iconic.
All right. Other question? Gentleman on the right?
What can you tell us about the culture shed? When it will open? How do you see it interplaying with the rest of Hudson Yards?
Okay, one of the components of Hudson Yards, a $15 billion project, is the culture shed. It's nothing like a shed, but it is a big cultural facility.
Well, it's a very unique structure in that it opens and closes. And when it's nested, there's a plaza, and then it rolls open where you have a 14,000 square foot, 100-foot high indoor component that can be used for various events, much like the Grand Palais in Paris is used. The Fashion Week will be coming there. They'll have TED conferences and a lot of different types of events that you can't have because of the size of it at the various cultural institutions in New York. And it's a very iconic building in itself. It plays a very important part. Alex Poots, who's been running the Park Avenue Armory shows and also the Manchester Festival, has been appointed the executive director, and he's going to have a very creative program there. And so it's under construction as well. We'll open up in the fall by the fall of 18 with the rest of the retail and the opening of the project. And I think people will really enjoy it. It'll be something very unique in New York.
I think that's all we have time for, unfortunately.
All right, well, thank you for having us. Steve,
Thank you.
thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.